Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is Anime Dreams, and I'm really glad to have you all here. Today, we're diving into another exciting fanfic, What If Naruko Trained at Titan's Tower? Part 2. If you enjoyed the first part, things are about to get even more intense, with new challenges, stronger bonds, and unexpected twists waiting ahead. Disclaimer. This content is created purely for entertainment and discussion purposes. I do not own any anime footage used in these videos. All rights and credits go to their respective creators and copyright holders. Now, without wasting any more time, let's begin. Cafeteria, Hive Academy. Either she's very brave, or she doesn't quite know what she's walking into. Well, this will be interesting. She seems calm. Almost too calm. Soft murmurs drifted across the cafeteria, bouncing from table to table like curious whispers in the wind. Yet none of it reached the girl at the center of attention. Naruto, or rather, Naruko, as she now called herself, sat quietly, her golden hair catching the light as she focused on the small mask in her hands. Her expression was calm, thoughtful, and steady, like a still pond untouched by ripples. "Can you pass the salt, please?" Without even glancing up, Naruko gently slid the salt shaker across the table. It stopped perfectly in front of Mammoth, the large and gentle-hearted student sitting nearby. He blinked in surprise, then smiled. "Thanks. You spend a lot of time on that mask," said Jinx, tilting her head with curiosity. Her pink hair fell to one side as she rested her cheek on her hand. "It must be really important to you." Naruko nodded softly. "Anything worth doing takes time." She carefully placed her small carving tool down and lifted the mask. It was smooth and pale, shaped like a skull but not frightening, more like a symbol of mystery and quiet strength. On its forehead, she had carved a single kanji. "Yurei," Naruko said gently. "It means spirit. Or soul. It reminds me to stay true to who I am, no matter where I go." Those nearby leaned in, not out of fear, but wonder. There was something peaceful about the mask, something thoughtful. Naruko tied it securely, covering her face. Her bright eyes, now hidden, seemed to shine even through the quiet presence she carried. "I'm heading to the gym," she said, standing up. There was no rush in her steps, no show of power, just quiet confidence. Hive Academy's training grounds. Hive Academy offered many ways for students to join. Some trained through obstacle courses, others studied quietly with books and written tests. Each path was different, and each student chose the one that suited them best. Naruko had chosen the challenge trial, a special path where students worked together, learned new skills, and showed their determination through teamwork and creativity. Her partner for the trial was Cheshire, a skilled and graceful student known for her quick thinking and clever ideas. When Naruko arrived, Cheshire was already there, sitting cross-legged and watching the clouds. "You're Naruko," Cheshire said with a small smile. "I've heard about you." Naruko nodded politely. "I've heard about you too." Instead of tension, there was a quiet understanding between them. Their task wasn't to compete, but to create something together, a strategy to navigate a complex training course filled with puzzles, moving platforms, and teamwork challenges. Naruko carefully unpacked her tools, adjusting her gloves and securing her gear. Her outfit was simple but practical, designed for movement and comfort. Everything she wore had a purpose, but nothing about it was intimidating. Cheshire stood and stretched. "Ready?" Naruko smiled beneath her mask. "Ready." As they began, something unexpected happened. They didn't rush ahead or try to outdo each other. Instead, they listened, observed, and worked side by side. Naruko used her careful planning and steady focus, while Cheshire brought creativity and clever solutions. When they reached a tricky section, Naruko paused. "What if we try it your way?" Cheshire blinked, surprised. "You trust me?" Naruko nodded. "Of course. We're a team." Step by step, they moved forward, helping each other, learning from each other, and growing stronger not by competing, but by cooperating. By the end of the day, the instructors watched with quiet approval. Naruko stood at the finish, her mask tilted slightly upward as she looked at the sky. "You did well," Cheshire said. "We did well," Naruko replied. And for the first time since arriving at the academy, the whispers around her changed, not into fear or doubt, but into something warmer. Respect. Naruko adjusted her mask gently, the symbol of Yurei resting calmly on her forehead. A reminder that strength wasn't just about skill. It was about heart, patience, and believing in others. And Naruko had all three. Hive Gymnasium, a gentle challenge. When most people thought of a gym, they imagined a place filled with weights, exercise equipment, and the steady rhythm of training. At the Hive Academy, however, things were a little different. The gymnasium was less about competition and more about growth. It was a vast hexagonal hall, its honeycomb tiles stretching across the floor like a carefully crafted puzzle. Rows of seats rose around it, and above, a patterned dome shimmered softly in the light. It felt less like a battleground and more like a place where stories unfolded. On this particular day, the stands were filled with curious students and teachers. They had gathered not to see a harsh contest, but to witness something new, a friendly test of skill and imagination. At the center of the room sat a young shinobi named Naruko. She sat calmly in a lotus position, her golden hair tied neatly behind her, her bright eyes closed in quiet focus. Though some in the crowd whispered nervously, Naruko's expression was peaceful. She wasn't there to prove herself stronger than anyone, she simply wanted to learn. Across from her stood Cheshire, graceful and mysterious, her cat-like mask tilted slightly as if she were smiling. She had a reputation for cleverness and trickery, and today, she had been asked to guide Naruko through a special exercise. A voice echoed gently through the gym. "Welcome, everyone," said Brother Blood, though his tone was unusually calm. "Today is not a contest of strength, but a demonstration of awareness and creativity. Let us begin." Cheshire shimmered, and then, she vanished. A soft murmur rippled through the audience. Naruko, however, didn't move right away. Instead, she slowly opened her eyes and took a deep breath. "She's hiding," someone whispered. "No," Naruko said softly, smiling. "She's playing." Naruko reached for her canteen and opened it carefully. Instead of rushing, she poured a little water into her palm and let it fall gently to the floor. A cool mist began to rise, spreading slowly across the tiles like morning fog. The audience leaned forward, intrigued. Naruko stood and stepped lightly to one side, as if listening to something only she could hear. A faint ripple in the mist gave away Cheshire's movement, not fully, just enough. "There you are," Naruko said kindly. Cheshire reappeared for just a moment, her mask tilted in approval before she vanished again. Rather than chasing her, Naruko began to walk through the fog, her steps soft and steady. "When I first started learning," Naruko said, her voice carrying through the mist, "I thought I had to be fast. Or strong. Or perfect." She paused, looking around at the swirling fog. "But I learned something better." The mist thickened slightly, curling around the honeycomb tiles and rising into gentle shapes. The gymnasium felt quieter now, almost magical. "You don't always have to see clearly," Naruko continued. "Sometimes, you just have to understand what's around you." Cheshire appeared again, this time not hiding, but standing a short distance away. She lowered her guard slightly, clearly impressed. Naruko smiled. "I think you were helping me learn, weren't you?" Cheshire gave a small nod. The fog slowly began to fade as the two stood facing each other, not as opponents, but as partners in learning. From above, Brother Blood spoke again. "Well done. Both of you." The crowd, once restless, now applauded warmly. There had been no harsh clash, no fear, only patience, cleverness, and understanding. Naruko rubbed the back of her head with a cheerful grin. "I still have a lot to learn," she said. Cheshire tilted her head, her eyes bright behind the mask. And for the first time that day, it was clear to everyone watching. This wasn't the story of a failure. It was the beginning of something wonderful. In a quiet training hall inspired by the world of Naruto Uzumaki, a young kunoichi named Naruko stood at the center of a misty practice field. She had bright, curious eyes and a determined spirit, and everyone knew her for her kindness as much as her courage. The mist around her wasn't dangerous, it was part of a special illusion exercise designed by her teachers to help students stay calm and focused. Still, the swirling fog made everything feel mysterious, like stepping into a dream. Naruko took a careful breath, placing a hand over her chest. "Okay," she whispered to herself, "stay steady." Soft sounds echoed through the mist, gentle whooshes, like wind brushing past leaves. Each sound was meant to test her awareness, not harm her. When she felt a light tap on her shoulder, she turned quickly, realizing it was just another illusion guiding her to react. "Focus on your balance," she reminded herself, stepping lightly from one platform to another that shimmered into view. Each step required trust in herself. One platform faded, and she wobbled slightly, but instead of panicking, she laughed softly. "I've got this," she said. Through the fog, shapes moved, not enemies, but glowing outlines, like friendly spirits guiding her path. Naruko reached out, trying to follow their motion, learning how to read the environment rather than fear it. At one point, she stumbled and fell backward into the mist. Ah, she cried out, more surprised than scared. But instead of hitting the ground, she landed gently, as if the fog itself had caught her. The illusion shifted, and the mist began to clear. Moments later, Naruko sprang lightly up onto the edge of the training field, smiling with a mix of relief and pride. In her arms, she helped another student who had also been practicing nearby and simply felt overwhelmed by the strange environment. "It's okay," Naruko said kindly. "It's just a test. We're safe." Teachers and helpers hurried over, not in alarm, but with warm smiles. "She did well," one of them said. "She stayed brave and helped someone else too." Naruko rubbed the back of her head sheepishly. "I still have a lot to learn," she admitted. But inside, she felt stronger than before. Not because she had faced danger, but because she had faced uncertainty, stayed kind, and didn't give up. And as the last wisps of mist faded away, Naruko looked ahead with bright determination, ready for whatever gentle challenge came next. 6 months later, the dormitory halls felt warmer, brighter, and a little more lively, mostly because of one person. Her name was Naruko Uzumaki. She had the same golden hair that always seemed to shine in the sunlight and the same boundless energy that made it nearly impossible for anyone around her to feel bored. But there was something else about Naruko, something curious, something no one could quite explain. "Are you still thinking about that?" Jinx asked, leaning against the desk with a playful sigh. Gizmo didn't look away from the computer screen. "No, I'm trying to understand it," he replied, adjusting his glasses as the video replayed once again. On the screen, Naruko moved quickly, so quickly that her figure blurred like a streak of sunlight dancing across water. One moment she stood in plain sight, and the next, she seemed to vanish, only to reappear somewhere unexpected. Jinx tilted her head. "Even I can't follow her when she does that," she admitted. "Exactly." Gizmo pointed at the screen. "See? Right there. She disappears before anyone can even blink." Jinx crossed her arms, trying to sound unimpressed. "Maybe she's just really good at moving fast. She did say she trained in a special ninja village." Gizmo shook his head. "It's more than that. It's like she knows where everyone will be before they even move." Before Jinx could respond, Mammoth's voice echoed down the hallway. "Hey! We're going to be late for class." Gizmo groaned and shut the computer. "Fine. But I'm not done figuring this out." They stepped out into the hallway just as a soft, cheerful laugh drifted toward them. Jinx's eyes narrowed slightly, though a smile tugged at her lips. "That sounds like trouble." Around the corner came Naruko, walking lightly as if the floor barely needed to hold her up. She waved brightly when she spotted them. "Hey! Good morning," she said, her voice warm and full of excitement. Behind her, a small group of students peeked from the hallway, whispering and giggling as they watched her. Some held notebooks, others seemed to be hiding something behind their backs. Naruko blinked, a little puzzled. "Why does everyone keep staring at me like that?" Jinx stepped beside her protectively. "Oh, nothing. Just people being weird again." Naruko laughed softly. "People are always a little weird. That's what makes them interesting." Gizmo studied her carefully. "Naruko, can I ask you something?" "Sure," she replied without hesitation. "When you move like that, how do you do it?" Naruko paused, placing a finger thoughtfully on her chin. Then she smiled, a gentle, slightly mysterious smile. "I just listen," she said. "Listen?" Mammoth repeated. "To everything," she explained. "The hava in the air, the tiny sounds around me, even the way people feel when they're about to move. It's like the world gives you little hints, and if you pay attention, you can follow them." Gizmo blinked. "That's not very scientific." Naruko giggled. "Maybe not. But it works." Jinx smirked. "Told you it wasn't something you could calculate." As they began walking toward class together, the group of whispering students slowly scattered, their giggles fading into the background. Naruko stretched her arms happily. "Today feels like a good day." "It's just a normal day," Gizmo said. Naruko shook her head gently. "There's no such thing as a normal day. Every day has something special, you just have to notice it." For a moment, no one argued. Even Gizmo stayed quiet. And as sunlight poured through the tall windows, following them down the hallway, it almost felt like Naruko was right. "Hallway. Aw, why me?" It was certainly not how Victor Stone imagined his morning would begin. One moment he was walking through the hallway, and the next he was surrounded by a crowd of overly excited students who had mistaken him for someone else. They tugged at his sleeves and asked rapid-fire questions, their enthusiasm bubbling over like a shaken soda bottle. "Little help, please," Victor called out, trying to keep his balance. Just then, a girl with pale skin and a focused expression hurried in, gently guiding the crowd away with a few quick gestures and a firm but calm voice. "Everyone, give him some space," she said. "You've got the wrong person." The students paused, blinking in surprise. One by one, they realized their mistake. "Oh. Sorry. Wrong hallway. Let's go." In moments, the crowd scattered, leaving Victor sitting on the floor, slightly dizzy but otherwise fine. From around the corner, Mammoth and Gizmo peeked out. "Well, that was something," Mammoth whispered. "Think we should call that a welcoming experience?" Gizmo replied, adjusting his glasses. Victor stood up, brushing himself off with a sigh. "I think I'll just call it a very confusing morning." From a distance, Naruko Uzumaki watched quietly. With her bright blonde hair and curious eyes, she had been the real target of the excited group, but, thanks to a clever body-switching trick, she had slipped away unnoticed. She placed a hand on her chin thoughtfully. "To think I used to envy Sasuke Uchiha," she murmured. "She can keep the attention." She gave a small, amused smile and continued on her way. Meanwhile, Konoha hideout. Sunlight streamed gently through the windows as Sasuke stirred awake. "It feels like someone just wished something strange on me," she said, stretching slightly. Nearby, Neji Hyuga sipped from a cup. "You're finally awake," Neji said calmly. "You've been sleeping longer than usual." Sasuke frowned slightly, still feeling that odd sensation, but shrugged it off. "Probably nothing." Hive cafeteria, 2 hours later. The cafeteria buzzed with chatter and clinking trays. At one table, Naruko sat with a simple meal, poking curiously at a piece of bread that had developed a peculiar blue patch. "That's interesting," she said. Across from her, a lively discussion was unfolding. "It was an accident," one student insisted. "You still spilled juice all over his notes," another replied. Naruko chuckled softly, shaking her head. "That makes 17 mix-ups this month," she said. "Maybe I should take a little break from all this excitement." Nearby, Gizmo carefully approached the unusual blue patch on the bread with a small glass jar. "For scientific purposes," he said proudly. Just as he lowered the jar, the patch seemed to crumble apart into harmless dust, leaving everyone blinking in surprise. "Oh," Gizmo said. "Well, that was anticlimactic." Mammoth scratched his head. "I thought it was going to do something exciting." Naruko smiled. "Sometimes things look scarier than they are," she said. "Turns out it was just old bread." Jinx leaned back in her chair with a sigh. "Another ordinary day, I guess." Naruko stood, stretching her arms lightly. "Ordinary can be nice," she said. "Less trouble, more time to enjoy things." As she walked toward the exit, the cafeteria settled into a calm rhythm once more. Conversations continued, trays were cleared, and the earlier chaos faded into a simple, peaceful afternoon. And for Naruko, that was more than enough. The quiet hallways stretched on, filled with soft echoes and flickering lights. Naruko paused for a moment, tapping her chin thoughtfully. "Now how should I go about this?" she whispered to herself. She had many ideas, some bold and some clever, but she quickly shook her head. No. Rushing in wouldn't be very smart, she decided. "I need to think this through properly." Naruko leaned gently against the wall, her bright eyes scanning the corridor. She imagined all the little details she might need to know, who went where, what the rooms were used for, and how everything fit together. It felt almost like solving a giant puzzle. Then a new thought popped into her mind. "Oh. Right. I'm supposed to find Gizmo," she murmured, blinking in surprise. She remembered hearing about Gizmo and his incredible talent for building and understanding all sorts of machines. If anyone could help her figure things out, it would be him. That made her feel a little more hopeful. As she continued down the hallway, Naruko noticed a door slightly open. A soft glow spilled out from inside, lighting the floor in a gentle blue hue. Curious, she carefully peeked inside. There, she saw Victor sitting quietly, examining something glowing in his arm. It shimmered with soft blue patterns, almost like tiny rivers of light flowing beneath glass. Naruko tilted her head, fascinated. Wow. That's amazing, she whispered. She didn't want to interrupt, so she quietly stepped back and continued on her way. Everyone had their own things to handle, and she respected that. A little while later, Naruko found herself outside, looking up at the towering building in the distance. She hummed, crossing her arms. If I want to get inside, I'll need a really clever plan. She thought about it carefully. Charging in wouldn't help. Waiting forever wouldn't either. There had to be a middle path, something smart, something creative. Naruko smiled. I'll figure it out, she said confidently. That's what I do best. With a light step and a determined heart, she set off again, ready to solve the puzzle her own way, one thoughtful idea at a time. Lethal amusement, abandoned warehouse, factory district, 2 hours later. I really should think about moving, whined Siji Muyomura as she misted a small, thorny vine sprouting from a pot. These conditions just aren't suitable for growing anything. Truth be told, the only real challenge she faced in her current space was the single skylight letting in light. A careful hand and a sweep of the broom could handle the rest. Perhaps if you lowered your standards and sold to the first person who knocked, you wouldn't live in such squalor, the merchant said, her expression full of playful disdain as she flicked another fine mist of water onto the little plant. Oh please, don't jest like that. It feels like an insult to offer quality work to those who won't appreciate it. Siji placed the bottle down and turned toward her visitor with a polite, if neutral, smile. Now, what brings you to my humble corner, Miss Uzumaki? Siji's brow arched at the sight of her old friend. Naruko Uzumaki had changed since they last met, wearing a utility belt with a small mask peeking at her side, yet Siji didn't dwell on it. Questions about other friends, like Riko Bunkai, lingered in her mind, but she would have to wait for answers. After all, this was the first visit from Naruko since their journey through the mysterious portal. With a casual motion, Naruko reached into her belt and handed Siji a scroll. 1 million in cash for a day of distraction, she said with her usual confident grin. Siji whistled low, impressed. Oh? Whom do you wish for me to distract this time? The Teen Titans, Naruko replied. A light laugh bubbled from Siji. That's all? How daring of you to choose such few opponents. She flailed her arms playfully, pretending to swoon in exaggerated despair, while the faint sound of Naruko walking away followed her. Tomorrow at 1 p.m., along the city outskirts. It helps if they're delayed a little, Naruko added, tossing the scroll over her shoulder. Spoil sport, Siji muttered, shaking her head as she began pacing the small warehouse. Now. What to prepare, what to perform, she murmured thoughtfully. Pier 19, 6:43 p.m. Hack. Slash. Swish. The air shimmered with imaginary sparks as a young swordswoman practiced with precision, her small wakizashi slicing through the light of the sunset. The sword was ordinary to the untrained eye, but its hand guard was unique, a hollow ring held by 4 delicate rods. She practiced movements inspired by sword, shield, and spear, twirling with the joy of skill and focus. With a flick, she kicked a rusty tin can into 2 halves and sighed, sheathing the blade. Her eyes softened as she bent to pick up a dark gray hooded windbreaker. Pulling it on, she revealed herself to be Tenten Bell, but dressed for the streets of Jump City rather than the dojo, baggy jeans, striped running shoes, and a light gray t-shirt. Her hair, tied in a ponytail with a blue scrunchie, bounced lightly behind her. Though she appeared strong, fatigue lingered. Her practice, once playful, had become a quiet companion, offering no answers to the questions buzzing in her mind. She walked along the pier, nodding politely to strangers, teenagers, travelers, and wanderers of all kinds, before slipping down an alley between warehouses, unnoticed. A muffled voice caught her attention. We won't say anything. Promise. Curious, she scaled a crate and leapt onto a roof, approaching a gaping hole that led to the warehouse below. There, she saw a small group of teens facing a band of mischievous troublemakers who had claimed the space. One of the older teens brandished a harmless-looking, pointed tool in mock menace, advancing toward the younger children who crouched nervously. Tenten's hand twitched, recalling the quiet guidance of her mentor, Kakashi Hatake, keep your head down, stay safe, and observe. Do not reveal yourself. She froze, heart beating fast. The mission was simple in words, observe Naruko Uzumaki. But in her heart, she wondered, why had Naruko chosen this peculiar task? On paper, it made sense, at least if she tried not to think too much about it. As a human being, however, it didn't. Naruko's fingers twitched nervously as the strange woman crept closer to the group of frightened kids. Logically, Naruko understood. The woman was testing their courage, gauging the unknown challenges of the mission ahead. She was a kunoichi of Konoha, trained to keep her feelings in check, to be patient and observant for the good of her team. She was supposed to sit quietly. She was supposed to wait. She was supposed to let events unfold without interference. But her heart thumped wildly as the woman came nearer, her eyes wide with fear. We didn't even do anything. Why? Why is this happening? Naruko whispered to herself. Her body shivered, not with weakness, but with the weight of knowing that sometimes, doing the right thing didn't align with what one was told to do. A soft voice, calm and metallic, drifted into her mind. There are times when duty and what is right do not coincide, it said. What will you choose? Naruko closed her eyes, and memories floated before her. She remembered standing silently in a crowd of shinobi, watching a familiar blonde boy with bright blue eyes struggling to free himself from chakra bindings. Everyone else had frozen, following orders. Everyone, except her. She had followed orders too, but her heart had whispered otherwise. I guess I'm still learning, huh? She murmured, a tiny smile forming. Her hands brushed over the hem of her hood, pulling it up over her hair, and she flicked open a small scroll from her pocket. With a graceful spin, Naruko moved forward, her movements light as a breeze. The scroll unfurled, releasing a gentle flurry of glowing paper stars that whirled around like fireflies, creating a sparkling barrier between the kids and the approaching woman. The children gasped and stepped back, their fear turning into awe as Naruko twirled nimbly, her hands guiding the stars in dazzling arcs. The woman stopped, startled by the sudden brilliance, her shadowed expression softening as Naruko's eyes glimmered with determination. The stars didn't harm, didn't bite or sting, they were simply a brilliant, shining puzzle, a reminder that courage could take many forms. Go. You're safe now, Naruko called, her voice firm yet warm. The children scampered through a hidden tunnel she had discovered earlier, their laughter bubbling even amidst the tension. From the shadows, allies emerged to help, figures who were both mysterious and familiar. A girl with a deep blue cloak raised her hands, weaving glowing shapes that gently nudged the remaining obstacles away. Beside her, a boy with a domino mask and a red vest swung a bow staff, skillfully redirecting obstacles to clear a safe path. Naruko's eyes sparkled as she watched them. She didn't need to fight to prove her bravery, she only needed to guide, protect, and shine brightly. With one final flick of her hands, the glowing stars danced around her and the children, forming a sparkling archway of light that welcomed them to safety. As the children ran through, one looked back and called, "Thank you, Naruko." She gave a small bow, her hood slipping back slightly to reveal her bright eyes. "Remember," she said softly, "bravery isn't just about fighting. It's about knowing what's right and helping others, no matter the risk." The world felt a little warmer that day, and Naruko, kunoichi of Konoha, knew that even small acts of courage could shine brighter than any jutsu or mission. The man scrambled to control his strange, whirring gadgets as the hooded figure that had scattered his crew gracefully kicked aside a glowing, floating wolf of light. He spun around, startled, as the mysterious teen disappeared again in a quick flash, like a shadow dancing in the sunlight. Before he could even react, a tangle of shimmering silver ropes sprouted from her gauntlets, wrapping around his gadgets and gently lifting them into the air. Naruko landed lightly behind him, her feet barely making a sound on the wooden floor, and the silver ropes tightened just enough to hold everything in place without causing any harm. "Time to calm down," she said softly, her voice steady and kind. The man's gadgets hummed and fizzled as she waved her hands, and the mechanical creatures that had been buzzing around slowly froze, then relaxed and drifted gently to the floor. Naruko's wakizashi-shaped gauntlets shimmered and melted into light, leaving her hands free to gesture gracefully. She exhaled quietly, a small puff of air that was more relief than anything else. It wasn't a sigh of frustration, it was the gentle release of a little tension from the adventure. From her perch atop a wooden beam, she glanced down and saw the teen titans watching her with wide, curious eyes. One of the crates that the glowing wolves had nudged open revealed shining, protective armor inside. Naruko gave them a quick, cheerful nod before stepping along the beam with effortless balance. With a smooth, playful leap, she disappeared through the hole in the wall, landing gracefully on the pier below. From the ground, whispers floated up from the teen titans. "Wow, that was amazing. Do you think she's a ninja?" one of them said. "Yeah. Do you think she'll come help us again if we get stuck somewhere?" another replied. "Only if we promise to be careful and not get into too much trouble," a small voice added. "Maybe we should head home now." "Just in case," said another, softly. Raven nodded without a word, and Robin dashed out the door, glancing back at the remnants of the scene with a smile. Naruko, ally or friend, had made it clear, there was a new, mysterious, and wonderful hero in town, and she moved through the world with kindness, courage, and a touch of magic. Titan's Tower, 1 p.m. Darn it, I was hoping something like this wouldn't happen. Every alarm, every klaxon, even the extra little timers the Teen Titans kept around had gone off at once, alerting everyone in the tower. And the reason? Well, it was the kind of unusual event that Titans never really avoided. Supervillains on a spree, mischievous robots, or sometimes. Holy! We're going to need a lot of plant spray for that one. A giant plant creature was causing chaos at the quarry. Its dark green vines and glowing ruby eyes gave it a slightly scary look, but Naruko knew it wasn't mean-spirited, just confused and lost. What made it unusual was its 3 heads, each with a curious eye that blinked in unison as if it were trying to see everything at once. Thick root-like arms waved in the air, and clusters of gem-like orbs shimmered on its shoulders, chest, and palms, reflecting sunlight like little lanterns. I agree with Beast Boy, Robin said seriously. We'll need a lot of plant spray for this one. But Robin had another worry, Naruko. The newest addition to the team had been practicing her ninja skills secretly in the tower, and now Robin wondered if she should stay hidden or help. She peeked from behind a console, her bright orange scarf fluttering in the slight breeze of the open window. Naruko's eyes sparkled with excitement. I can help. I can do a lot, she said confidently, her hands curling into small fists. She wore a purple and orange ninja outfit, with a little pouch for her scrolls and tools, and her sandals made soft tapping sounds on the floor. Is the plan ready, Beast Boy? Robin asked, trying not to look flustered. Boo yeah! Came the cheerful reply, as the green-skinned teenager pressed buttons on his control panel. Naruko giggled, hopping lightly onto a nearby chair. I can help, too, she exclaimed, her voice bright like sunlight. With a whirl of her hands, she sent a tiny wind spirit spinning across the room, lifting papers and light objects in a playful dance. Please, Beast Boy, Starfire said gently, her orange eyes soft with concern. There are creatures who need our help. Naruko's face lit up. She nodded eagerly. Then let's go. We can help them, I promise. She grabbed her small scroll, unrolling it to show a plan for calming the plant monster with gentle wind, water, and soothing lights from her little orbs. All right, Robin said finally, his lips curving into a small smile. Team, let's move out. Beast Boy clicked the last command, and Cyborg's duplicate sprang into action, charging toward the quarry without a second thought. Boo yeah! The robot cheered, its enthusiasm almost as big as Naruko's excitement. Naruko bounced on her toes, tugging gently at Robin's sleeve. Let's go help. We'll make it safe for everyone. And with that, the team rushed forward, not with fear, but with hope, ready to turn a scary situation into an adventure filled with laughter, clever tricks, and teamwork. Even the 3-headed plant seemed curious now, its eyes following Naruko's gentle movements, almost as if it understood that she meant no harm. Today wasn't just about stopping chaos, it was about helping, learning, and making new friends in unexpected places. Outside. Boo yeah! That was the only sound to burst through the tower's front door, echoing across the quiet island. Naruko, hidden in the shadow of a jagged crag, peeked out with wide, curious eyes. Was I wrong? She wondered aloud. Her gaze followed 2 familiar figures racing after the door-crashing commotion. Beast Girl, with her green skin gleaming, was giving a ride to her friend Cyborgina, while Starfire zoomed gracefully through the air. Friend Beast Girl, please make friend Cyborgina stop before she crashes into another door. Naruko called in her tiny but urgent voice. I'm trying. Came the panicked reply. Naruko tilted her head thoughtfully. A double, 2 copies, was clever. It would confuse anyone who tried to stop them. But her sharp eyes narrowed when a glowing portal opened, and Robinina appeared on her shiny red motorcycle. Just one glance from the determined teen was enough to make Cyborgina pull out a hidden gadget, conjuring a backup door to replace the ruined one. Naruko shook her head with a small smile. No worries, there were always more ways in than the front door, by design or by cleverness. Dash. Gold, Star Quarry, Jump City outskirts, 20 minutes later. Seiji Muyomura sighed from his perch on a nearby hill, almost melting into his chair from boredom. Watching his creation roam the nearly empty quarry had lost its thrill. The workers had long fled, and no law enforcement dared approach. Perhaps I chose a poor spot, he mused idly, fingers steepled in thought. Then, from the distance, came a familiar shout that made him jolt upright. Boo yeah! Cyborg Gina charged down the quarry road, Beast Girl riding atop her, thumbs furiously pressing buttons on a controller. Starfire followed, flying high, and Robinina roared past on her motorcycle. Sijit could barely hear their conversation, but the excitement and energy were unmistakable. "Seems I worried over nothing," Sijit muttered, sinking back into his chair as his monster turned its attention to the newcomers, energy bolts and sparks bouncing harmlessly around. Refreshing Spring Cafe, Jump City. Naruko's friend, Tenten, sipped herbal tea at a small wired table. The cafe's brew wasn't remarkable, but it was calming. She had taken the day off from tracking Naruko, who had been out of sight for some time. Experience and intuition told her no one was following. Her curiosity had drawn her back to the warehouse earlier, where she found a lone crate left behind, overlooked by the busy police. Inside was a set of adjustable protective armor. Tenten couldn't resist trying it on. With a few minor tweaks, the armor protected her as promised against thrown objects, and it was fun to move around in. After hours of testing and exploring, she had nowhere else to go. It was too early to train in the pier's shadows, and she wasn't inclined to fuss over her new gear. So she wandered, following her feet, until she stumbled upon this cafe. She took a quiet sip of tea and glanced at the TV screen, where the news broadcast caught her attention. No one is sure where it came from, nor has anyone claimed credit for the act, but a colossal plant-like creature has appeared out of nowhere, currently causing a ruckus at Gold Star Quarry. Most workers have evacuated, but a few remain trapped in the tunnels or offices. Tenten's eyes twinkled. Adventure had a funny way of finding you, even on the quietest days. Chocolate brown eyes swiveled toward the screen, and Naruko noticed she wasn't the only one watching. Across the room, heads tilted in curiosity as the news broadcast displayed a strange and enormous creature moving clumsily through Jump City. A helicopter hovered above, capturing the scene from the sky. Beams of shimmering blue and green light streaked toward the creature, bouncing harmlessly off it like playful sparks of energy. The creature growled, waved its massive limbs, and stomped around, but no one appeared to be hurt. The newscaster continued, "This is the only footage we have so far. Authorities have declared a no-fly zone after a recent near-miss with the Channel 5 newscopter. The Teen Titans are on the scene and are monitoring this curious creature." Naruko leaned closer, her mind buzzing with wonder. Could this be the work of Muyomura? Perhaps. But the world was full of people who could tinker with nature in unusual ways, and some were known to create creatures for reasons that were more mysterious than mean-spirited. Naruko's thoughts raced as she imagined how the creature had been made, how it moved, and whether it was afraid or lonely. Even if it was Muyomura's doing, Naruko considered whether her team should respond. Part of her knew it wasn't their job to step in unless people were truly in danger, but another part of her thrilled at the idea of helping solve a puzzle like this. Her brown eyes scanned the room around her, a fire sparking inside. A hand curled into a small, determined fist. She would figure this out. XVX. Titan's Tower, Vault. Naruko slipped quietly into the vault, a room filled with gadgets, shiny trophies, and strange inventions from adventures past. The air vents whispered hints that the vault was cleverly designed, there were multiple ways in, and every corner had a surprise. Of course, she murmured to herself, they haven't dealt with a real shinobi yet. Her eyes glimmered as she scanned the collection of items, careful not to touch anything fragile. At the back of the room, a wall looked ordinary, but Naruko's instincts told her it hid something important. She brushed her hand along it, and a panel slid open quietly. "Identification, please," a smooth, friendly robotic voice chimed. Naruko sighed. This was going to be trickier than she thought. She dug into her utility belt and pulled out a small, round disc with a bold green G in the center. A secret switch clicked, and the disc flickered to life like a tiny TV screen. "Huh. What do we have here?" The device's voice greeted her as an image appeared on the screen. Naruko grinned. "Let's see what kind of fun surprises this vault has in store for me." With nimble fingers, she activated the disc, sending little wires and tools to interact with the security system. The vault didn't know it yet, but Naruko was about to solve its puzzle, with curiosity, cleverness, and the kind of bravery that only a true young hero could bring. Gold Star Quarry. The horticulture specialist sighed as he watched his giant plant creature struggle in the midst of the chaotic scene. The only damage it had suffered was a chipped tooth on its right head and a small tear in the thorny armor that protected the glowing crimson orb on its chest. Everything else seemed to spark only more rage from the creature. "I called it," he muttered to himself, leaning back with a sigh. No real challenge from a bunch of kids. He barely noticed the sounds of the scuffle below. It seemed certain that the young heroes would fail against his creation. The only significant damage came from the combined efforts of the team rescuing their orange-skinned friend, who had been caught in the right head's jaw, and a half-hearted attempt to strike the orb on its chest. Even that wasn't enough to really harm the plant. It was both boring and strangely amusing to watch them try. Scree! The creature let out a roar as its left arm was severed at the elbow. Furious, it lashed out wildly, every head trying to swipe at its attackers. But then a new figure appeared, a girl dressed in sleek black armor with bright, metallic gauntlets. She moved like the wind, jumping onto the plant's torso and weaving between its flailing claws with ease. The horticulturist blinked in surprise, leaning closer to his binoculars. The girl's movements felt hauntingly familiar, as if from a memory with no clear face. She moved with skill and determination, dodging strikes and striking back without hesitation. Her outfit was simple but effective, a black unitard with straps and armor covering her chest, legs, arms, and feet. Her helmet had a single panel of goggles, and a cloth mask hid her mouth. But the most remarkable part was her gauntlets. Shiny and metallic, they could extend into hooks or transform into a shield at a moment's notice. She leapt and twirled, her bright orange hands gripping her tools with precision. 2 minutes earlier. Wow! This thing is tough. Beast Boy called out, ducking as the plant swiped at him. Starfire, distract it. Give us a chance to hit the orb, Robin commanded. Right. Starfire zipped across the plant's arm, while Beast Boy retrieved the only tool capable of controlling the robotic copy they had brought along. They launched a flurry of attacks, glowing discs, sonic waves, and tiny explosive projectiles, but the plant barely flinched. Did it even feel that? Beast Boy asked, worried. Robin's eyes darted across the battlefield. Starfire, get out of there. At that very moment, Naruko appeared, landing lightly on the plant's left shoulder and sliding down toward its elbow. Starfire followed, trusting the girl's skill and bravery. Naruko's gauntlets clanged together, forming a long silver blade that glimmered with a mysterious blue sheen. She struck at the plant's arm, and the metal seemed to melt into the plant itself without resistance. The attack worked. The team took a moment to regroup while the plant thrashed in anger, pounding the ground with all three heads. Focus on its stem, Naruko shouted, her voice clear and commanding. I'll distract it. Robin nodded. You heard her. Target the stem. With determination sparkling in her eyes, Naruko leapt from the creature's arm, dodged incoming thorns, and scaled the enormous plant with grace and courage. Every movement was precise, every strike full of hope. She wasn't just fighting to win, she was protecting her friends and showing them that bravery could come in the form of a girl who never gave up. Dash. Naruko shines as a clever, fearless, and inspiring hero, and the story is now safe, uplifting, and child-friendly. Naruko in the Tower of Puzzles. High above the city, in the gleaming Titan's tower, a mysterious vault sat behind layers of security. Only 2 defenses remained, and to anyone else, it would seem impossible to reach. But Naruko, with her spiky orange hair catching the sunlight, grinned. She loved a challenge. Only 2 layers of defense? That's child's play, she whispered to herself. The first security system had already been bypassed, and now only the grand vault door, adorned with a floating skull above a bright red X, stood between her and the prize. All it needed was a podium to activate it, and Naruko was more than ready for the task. Meanwhile, in a smaller control room, a tiny genius tinkered with the electronic lock. Gizmo, what are you doing? Naruko's friend Jinx asked, peering over the console. I'm working here, Slugface. Gizmo chirped, not looking up. A small thunk echoed through the room, followed by an audible ow. Naruko smirked. Hacking something remotely, huh? Jinx's eyes widened as a second communicator buzzed to life. She picked it up, revealing her own image on the tiny screen. You actually managed to break into the tower without setting off an alarm. Naruko didn't need to answer. Jinx tilted her head and asked, do you think you could grab one of Robin's masks as a souvenir for me? Her smile was so hopeful it could melt steel. Naruko chuckled and waved. Bye, Jinx. She ended the call, though Gizmo's laughter echoed through the small room, much to Jinx's chagrin. Dash. Far away, in Gold Star Quarry, a huge, twisting plant monster had begun to stir. Though weakened and tired, it stretched its vines across the ground, seeking to entangle anything nearby. But Naruko wasn't afraid. Her eyes, sharp and chocolate brown, took in the entire scene. Hey! Tenten called, startled, as Naruko landed gracefully on a nearby boulder. Thanks for the assist. A sharp whistle cut through the air. Naruko's ears perked instantly. She had learned to listen carefully to every sound in her training, and she knew this wasn't ordinary. A kunai had been thrown, slicing through the air. "Duck!" Naruko yelled, diving forward. She shielded Tenten from the flying knives, landing on a tree branch with a light roll. The kunai bounced harmlessly off a magical barrier surrounding them. Below, the ground exploded with thick vines, twisting into humanoid shapes. "Whoa!" Tenten muttered, scrambling to stand. Even with the barrier, Naruko knew they were in for a challenge. But Naruko was clever. She leapt from branch to branch, her movements flowing like water. She used her chakra to guide the vines away from her friends, creating paths for them to escape safely. Every motion was precise, like a dance. A figure appeared on a higher branch, an arms dealer watching them with interest. He was mysterious and calculated, but Naruko wasn't intimidated. "From the way you move, it's clear you're skilled," he said, though Naruko simply twirled and landed lightly on a sturdy vine, facing him. She gave him a confident smile. "You're underestimating me." The plants writhed below, but Naruko's clever thinking turned them to her advantage. She redirected vines to wrap gently around the arms dealer's feet, keeping him balanced but safe. She wasn't mean, she believed in solving problems without hurting anyone. "Now, let's see. Who else is in this team?" the dealer muttered. Naruko twirled and darted between branches, her kunai spinning harmlessly in the air, creating dazzling arcs of light. She was fast, clever, and full of heart. With a final leap, she landed on a high branch, smiling down at the plants she had gently redirected. "Everyone's safe," she said proudly. "And I think we all learned something today. Teamwork and clever thinking go further than force." Even the arms dealer nodded in admiration. "You're remarkable," he said softly. "A true kunoichi of Konoha." Naruko's grin widened. "And I'm just getting started." The axes of her gauntlets shimmered and shifted back into their usual, familiar form as Naruko's sharp eyes narrowed at the mischievous man in front of her. "So, Tenten Bell," she called out in a steady voice, "how many got past you just to chase us? Or, were you really after me?" Her opponent paused, as if measuring his words carefully. A sly grin crept across his face, and for a moment, Naruko felt a shiver of curiosity instead of fear. Chains of gleaming metal rose from the ground, wriggling like playful snakes, but Naruko's focus didn't waver. "I have to ask," the man said, voice light and teasing, "is it really such a good idea to chase someone who clearly wants to explore on her own?" Naruko leapt gracefully, her movements as fluid as the wind, while her chains danced in the air like ribbons. They swirled and twirled, keeping pace with the man's playful antics. "It's kind of funny," he added, "you know, someone tried the exact same trick years ago, but they didn't have your spirit." Naruko's lips curled into a small smile. She wasn't going to let anyone stop her from exploring, not today. In a flash, the man summoned a flurry of vines, which spun around in curious patterns as if they had a mind of their own. "Azeroth Metri and Xenothos," he called out, and the vines shimmered with a strange, magical energy. Naruko's eyes widened in wonder, but she didn't falter. With a few clever twirls of her gauntlets, she guided her chains to gently redirect the vines away, careful not to harm them, just keeping them busy. "Whoa! Look at them grow!" Starfire exclaimed, her eyes sparkling as she observed the magically animated plants. "It's like they're alive." Naruko nodded, eyes gleaming. She had to be clever, just like a true shinobi, to keep up with such an unpredictable friend, or foe. She darted through the forest, her movements precise and light. Behind her, the vines twined into playful shapes, creating mini replicas of magical creatures she had only read about in storybooks. "Let's go!" Starfire cheered, soaring alongside her as they both dodged the mischievous sprouts. Naruko's clone followed closely, imitating her every move with perfect precision. Even when the vines twisted and turned, trying to block their path, Naruko's quick thinking kept everyone safe. "Who are you really, and why are you doing this?" Raven asked, her voice calm but curious, as she reached eye level with the man, who now held a small, glowing scroll in one hand. Naruko tilted her head, her curiosity piqued. The man's grin widened, and the scroll began to shimmer. Sparks of light danced across the parchment as he carefully opened it. But instead of danger, the scroll revealed a playful riddle, a puzzle designed to challenge their wits, not their strength. Naruko's eyes lit up. "A puzzle?" she murmured to herself, heart racing with excitement. "Now this is more like it." With a gentle leap, she bounded toward the floating scroll, her hand steady as she unraveled its secrets. The plants around them seemed to sense her intent and parted, forming a sparkling pathway. Starfire giggled, swooping to help, while her clone mirrored every clever twist and turn. Naruko paused and looked back at her friends, all of them beaming with excitement. "It's not about chasing or fighting," she said softly. "It's about thinking, exploring, and having fun together." The man chuckled, giving a small bow. "Well said, Naruko. Perhaps you're the cleverest of them all." And with that, the playful chase turned into a game of laughter and riddles, where every vine, every shadow, and every spark of light became part of their magical adventure. Naruko's heart swelled with joy. This was the kind of adventure she had always dreamed of, one where cleverness, courage, and kindness could solve any challenge. "Booyah!" Naruko's clone cheered, bouncing happily as the friends celebrated another day of magic, teamwork, and endless wonder. Tenten stifled a gasp as she stretched in an odd, exaggerated way, catching two heads whipping toward a blurred white and blue figure that zipped through the surrounding brush before vanishing again. Beast Boy followed soon after, only to find Raven and Starfire staring at him, Raven with mild annoyance, Starfire with wide-eyed curiosity. The masked hero perched on a tree branch above them. Starfire turned just in time to see the kunoichi disappear suddenly, making her jump. "Huh? Hi?" Beast Boy offered with a sheepish grin. "Is everyone all right?" Robin asked, landing beside them in a smooth, practiced motion. His eyes narrowed on what appeared to be a severed foot. "Don't worry. It's not a foot. It's a plant that looks like one." Starfire chimed cheerfully, waving the quirky imitation in the air. "Aw, cool. I want to see." In a blink, Beast Boy was beside Starfire, staring at the plant replica with wonder. Meanwhile, Raven's look alone sparked curiosity far stronger than any fake foot ever could. Rooftops, Jump City proper, 2:26 p.m. A single boot swung lazily as Naruko perched on the edge of a rooftop, her unmasked face calm and observant. The city streets below were alive with shoppers and pedestrians, many heading into bright electronic stores. But Naruko wasn't looking at the gadgets, she was people watching, her keen ninja senses taking in every detail. She had spent the past week learning about the Teen Titans. 5 to 6 days were meant for observing their routines, finding the safest ways to approach or retreat, and understanding any patterns they might follow. But today, after a small diversion and some help from her scroll, the planning was done. What was left for her to do? "I suppose that's enough fun for one day," she murmured, her voice soft as she continued to watch the bustling streets below. From the shadows, Siji appeared, stepping lightly onto the rooftop. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the city's hum. "6 months in this city, and you're still as chatty as ever, aren't you?" Naruko teased lightly as Siji moved closer, leaning casually against the ledge. "You know," Siji said suddenly, "I learned something interesting today." He glanced at Naruko, noting her quiet attention. "We are not alone." He held up a playful hand gesture. Naruko didn't blink, she rarely did. "Tough audience," he muttered, sighing. Then he leaned in slightly, a grin returning to his face. "Your friend Tenten Bell helped the Teen Titans today." Naruko's eye flicked toward him, curiosity sparking. "And she did well?" she asked quietly, the corner of her mouth lifting just a little. "She certainly did," Siji confirmed with a nod. Undisclosed location. The room was dim, lit only by the glow of many screens. Each screen showed the Teen Titans in past adventures, heroic leaps, clever plans, and occasional mischief. The largest screen displayed the most recent challenge, a giant, unruly weed spreading through the city park. "Earl Grey, madam," an older servant said, carefully pouring tea into a delicate cup on a black marble stand. Seated beside him was Naruko, the young shinobi now dressed casually yet elegantly. Her outfit was simple and practical, straight-legged pants, a sleeveless top, and slip-on shoes that whispered comfort. Her shoulder-length hair fell neatly over one eye. She lifted the cup gracefully to her lips. "Thank you," she said quietly, her eyes never leaving the screens. She studied the Teen Titans' triumphs and struggles with calm fascination. "They are clever, but still learning," Naruko observed softly, noting how each hero adapted to challenges. Her eyes flicked briefly to a live feed of a figure in the distance. "And yet, even the strongest have their limits," she added, more to herself than anyone else, letting the tea warm her hands as she continued watching the heroes grow. Dear YouTube family, this is all for now. If you enjoyed the content, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Your support means everything. Thank you. Regards. Anime Dreams.